to the Whatnots Reactor Core number 120. We have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That's the right thing. I feel like I always mix up what the actual title is. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That's what we're here to talk about.
Into, across, and then beyond.
And then beyond, to infinity and beyond, indeed. My name is Kyle Springer. I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How has your weekend been?
It's been good so far. I was just playing some Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom right before this. I started my Mission Impossible rewatch. Yeah, it's been a good weekend. And of course, went to go see Across the... See, I keep mixing it up. Across the Spider-Verse, yeah. Spider-Verse 2. That's what I
also started my Mission Impossible rewatch, but I wanted to make sure I was caught up with the most recent chunk of films because I've got several things I need to catch up on, watching the Indiana Joneses, etc.
Yeah.
So I started at 4.
Okay.
I'm like, this is where I feel like things in the Mission Impossible lore start to get important. I'm going to go 4, 5, 6 to make sure I'm fresh on those. And then if I have spare time, loop back around to 1, 2, 3.
Go back and watch
so I'm
those
doing
ones,
some sort of a weird Star Wars order with these.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Melissa, Into the Spider-Verse. Let's start talking about that. We'll do our spoiler-free thoughts up front, and then we can get into spoilers a little bit later on. I will have our traditional spoiler alert thing for those who want to know when spoilers are coming up. But what did you think?
Why do I have to go first? You go first. I know this is your jam.
I loved it. I think everything that you've been hearing people say online of just like, it's great, it's incredible, it's amazing, the art is stunning, it's so good. I second that, all of it. I had a blast with this. I really loved the art style and the ways that they continued to take a movie that is known for its incredible art styles and continue to push that. That I think is just incredible how they can continue to wow me, right? With like, man, I've seen them do so many weird things in this art and all of that, and they just continue to do that with new things. I'm like, oh, that's so neat. Like that's cool how they incorporated that into the visual aspects, all that stuff. There's a bad guy that shows up right at the start that seems like these like diagram drawings. It looks like these old like Da Vinci drawings of his contraptions, and it's an interesting take on that and how they can make it look 2D and paper-like, but also fit in this 3D space, and it also feel like it has a physical presence. It's baffling. But yeah, I still had a few. I hesitate to call them issues because then they're gonna be like, oh, you didn't like this film. No, I absolutely loved it. What I liked is that the issues that I did have is stuff that was being worked out on screen. Like the stuff, like I would think something in my head and then someone would say that exact thing. And so I feel like I'm like right there in there with the movie, with the creators of like, okay, if we do this thing, people are going to think this one, or they'll think this, or they might have this thought, and they are like actively answering those things. I don't think they've been resolved yet. That's kind of because this is a part 1 of part 2. But I really don't have very many bad things to say on this. But I can see some arguments that I've seen people mention online of just that the art is a lot, and it's a lot all the time.
That is true.
But yeah.
It is a little overwhelming at first. I think I did settle into it after a little while, but Yes, it is very much to take in, and your eyes are kind of darting all
Absolutely.
over the screen, and you're like, am I really taking anything in right now? Am I absorbing this okay?
Yeah, like I would say that I think it does a good job just with its composition and like
Yeah.
like it does a great job directing you where it wants you to look, but even then there's stuff everywhere on the screen all the time. And yeah, it's just it's a delight. I loved this a lot. Um so yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Do you have any other like stuff that you want to add
I
to that?
I feel like my experience was not unique. I also enjoyed it very much. I think it's really solid. It's not exactly what I expected, just in terms of
Mm,
the order of the events, the little bits that you had seen in the trailers, what characters we were spending the most time with, how the story actually ends up at the end of these 2 hours and 15 minutes or whatever. And some cameos, some stylistic things, some extra special Peters.
yeah,
I there was a lot of very nice stuff to find in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, very solid.
absolutely. When I walked out of the theater and was talking with my partner, I was like, even though this is a part one, it feels like a much more complete movie than for example
Yeah.
Fast 10, which is also kind of a
Yes.
part one of something there. Like part that Fast 10 ends and you don't feel like you got the whole movie, you don't feel like you got the whole story. And even though that's the same thing here, it felt more complete. Like I got much more of a well-rounded story in this than I did in Fast 10. So I think that's a good thing. That said, I think there is also a villain in this movie that does not get the spotlight as much as I think he should have.
Yeah. Yes.
It felt a little bit lacking in that one storyline, but they are doing a lot in this for sure. So yeah, I cannot wait for part 2 to see how this concludes. We can go beyond the Spider-Verse. What is beyond the Spider-Verse? Who knows?
Other superheroes. You have to go to the Hulk verse or something.
Right, the millipede verse or something. You get some other
just
bug
more
or insect.
bugs.
Yeah, some arachnid thing. I had a blast. I have so many good things to say about this. Go see it. Run. Don't walk.
This will be in theaters for 2 months. You may walk. I give you permission to stroll at your
hurry.
leisure.
But get there now. Pause this podcast. Go there now, and then
put on some
back.
sunscreen. Get into your car. Buckle up. Check your brake lights.
If the check engine light comes on during the trip, and remember, every 3,000 miles, bring it into Jiffy Lube. No, I have so many good things. I don't think I feel like I'm just gonna sound like a broken record.
Yeah.
Here.
So let's get into that spoiler break then.
Indeed.
Let's get specific.
Bam. There we go. Spoiler alert. So I don't feel like we really need to go into much of all of what the plot is, beat by beat, all that stuff, but kind of top level. This picks up sometime after the first one. Starts out with Gwen Stacy. She's trying to fit in and deal with her life. It's not really working out like she would hope. She really misses Miles. Miles over in his universe really missing Gwen Stacy, trying to make things work, and it's working-ish, right? Like he's getting by. But apparently, from the events of the first movie, if you remember the one scene where they are running through the building and he throws the bagel at the dude, that is that man's like villain origin story. because he gets hit in the head with the bagel. He's mad. He's upset. He's stressed. He was just trying to do sciencey things, and that ruins everything. He's also in the room when that big, I don't even remember what it is, the big collider, the big thing that they're experimenting on there, when all of that goes wrong. And that is kind of what gives him his powers, that he now becomes the villain Spot. And he has these spots that he can throw out kind of wherever he wants, and it is basically a loophole, like a wormhole to wherever he wants. And so we first see him trying to steal some money out of an ATM, and he is self-proclaiming himself as Miles's next big villain, and it's just not working out for Spot. Spot's kind of tripping over himself, and this is the villain that I was alluding to, that he's in here, and there's a bit of, like, there is quite a bit of him, but I don't think they really do him justice in that. What do you think of Spot?
First off, you reminded me of one of my favorite jokes in the movie, which is when he's doing a villain monologue at Spider-Man. Like, they're fighting out on the street, and his Officer Morales is there, and Spot is telling Miles, I created you, you created me. And then his dad says, Spider-Man, why did you create that man?
It's like, I didn't. I don't know what he's talking
about. You threw the bagel that set my life in disarray. And he was experimenting with the multiverse, and he brought the spider into this world that bit Miles and made him this universe's Spider-Man, which is... that sets the climax of this movie and the initiation for the next movie into motion, where Miles ends up back in the wrong universe, because he goes to not his universe, but the one where his spider is from, where it was supposed to have bitten somebody else until it got transported to another dimension and bit him. And that's Oscar Isaac's whole point. Your universe wasn't supposed to have 2 Spider-Men, while another universe had 0. I got to set this right. Yeah. But I liked Spot. I love the way he moves across the screen. Did you ever see those webtoons, Batman, Spider-Man?
I think so. Yes. Where
they've got, like, they move like a slinky or like one of those water wiggle worms. Like, it's like they move entirely bonelessly across a space, and he's got that sort of motion to him. He's real fun to watch on screen.
He's
great
lanky,
voice work.
He's awkward. He's more like he has like a thicker body with these really skinny like arms and legs. It just has this awkward look to him, and he's a lot of fun to see on screen. And his whole throughout the movie, he's kind of powering up is the thing, and why we don't get to see him like be the actual main villain of this movie per se is because he's powering up this whole time, so that in the next one he will be this really serious threat. And at the very least, I like that they are taking the time to set up a villain for part 2, right? Which is neat.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but I was going into this expecting to see more of him. I think when we were first getting details about this movie, it seemed like there was going to be a lot more Spot. And then in the trailers, you really didn't see him much. And we're like, oh, maybe they're saving him. Maybe they can't spoil most of the scenes Spot is in. And then you see the movie and it's like, oh, he's really not in that much.
Yeah.
But you're right.
He's a bad guy for sure.
Yeah, he's one of them. But I think they have sufficiently laid the groundwork for everything he's going to do in the third movie. Yeah. And I was weirdly very touched when he realized what his power is and what he can do. And he says, the power of the multiverse in the palm of my hand.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Because once he finally gets the power that he does have, he becomes this like reverse of himself, whereas when you first see him he is white with these black spots, and then when he fully powers up he is black with these white spots, and his art style changes. It becomes much more like Dada influence that art
Yeah.
movement, where it is just this kind of nonsense, but like a malevolent nonsense. If you guys have read Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol, he reminds me a lot of Mr. Nobody.
Okay, yeah.
Who is very much this like Dada influence, like I'm just nonsense, and how do you fight the concept of nothing, right? Whereas this, he's more in control of the multiverse and can do some stuff with that. But the art, I loved the art style on him once he's fully powered up. Like he looks menacing and he looks evil.
Right, and he looks all like scratchy and wet and Rorschach-y.
Yeah.
And I like that when he's describing his universe, it's like these black and white like ink drawings. Again, they're always pushing the envelope with how everything looks. Yeah.
Exactly. Or like even like in the midst of all that ink, like there's like a crayon texture or like a colored pencil. Like it felt like at the very core of it, like the idea of creation, like drawing something on paper, right? And he was not papery, like he did not feel or look like paper, like the Vulture da Vinci Vulture version that we got at the start of the film. But it felt like a child, like drawing on the wall or drawing outside of the lines where it's scratchy and all over the place. And it was an interesting art style, to say the least. But the kind of main what ends up being kind of the main conflict of the movie is my man Spider-Man 2099 here. I have a Spider-Man 2099 action figure that I've had for like 2 decades.
Wow.
This is an old one. This is back.
You've had this since Toby was Spider-Man.
Since like before Toby was Spider-Man. Something. Yeah. I don't remember exactly
pre-Toby
when I got this or when his comics first started coming out, but at one point Target had you can get a reprint of Spider-Man 2099 issue 1, and it came with this action figure here. And so that's what I have here, some old action figure from when I was a wee little lad. But he ends up kind of being the main antagonist in this. He is kind of dubbed himself the keeper of the Spider-Verse. He doesn't say that exactly in the movie, but that's kind of the role that he takes on. That all of the spider people and all of their separate universes, they all have kind of key touchstone events, key canon events, and unfortunately, the spider people need to kind of go through those events to become the Spider-Man that they're supposed to become, for their universe to kind of maintain itself and not crumble and fall apart and be a problem. And he's kind of kept all of these universes on track, and that's kind of the way it has been. And it's this idea that like the Uncle Ben has to die.
Yes.
Captain Stacy has to die. Maybe even the Gwen Stacy equivalent has to die, right? Like he has to go through whatever those moments are for that specific Spider-Man. They have to go through their version of that to then become a full-fledged Spider-Man here. And Miles is kind of an anomaly. He's not really like all the other spider people. The spider that bit him was not from his universe. That was the big thing, which you kind of alluded to already. But he is a spider person who's just about to have his he's already kind of had his Uncle Ben moment with Uncle Aaron, but he's just about to have his Captain Stacy moment. And they allude to that being his dad, who is the police officer he's about to make captain. I think this is a great, not twist on his story, because that's kind of what it is in the comics too, kind of. I say that because in the comics at one point his dad was a SHIELD agent, is less of a cop, whereas in the Miles Morales video games his dad is a cop. So it's right there mixed, like it's commonly known that in some versions of him he is his dad is a cop. But yeah, they're basically like, hey, your dad's about to die. We weren't going to tell you.
Yeah.
But Gwen has such a crush on you that she kind of accidentally clued you into some things, and you kind of brought yourself along for the ride and accidentally found out this stuff. And this is where the main like crisis of the movie pops up here, where he wants to go save his dad, and they're like, actually, you can't do that. You need to let him die. And that's where the conflict comes in, and that's where he starts running from all the spider people, all that, so on and so forth. That's all that I will kind of say on the plot, because that is basically it. Yeah. So in all of that, where did you want to hop in? Do you want to hop in on Gwen? Do you want to talk about this conflict, or Spider-Man 2099? What stood out?
I liked getting to visit so many different places. Like in the first movie, I think the other spider entities are coming to one main universe, and he goes like, he goes to different places in his universe, just in his own state of New York. And I like getting to travel. I like that we're there. We're in Gwen's universe. We're in Mumbattan. Mumbattan's really cool. We're in Spider-Man 2099's city. I love we're in a Lego universe. The location hopping, I think, is one of the finer touches of this movie.
Yeah, that was neat to it actually is a spider-verse, right? You're not stuck in that one universe. I know there's a lot of Easter eggs in all of these things. I did not catch all of them. I know they make mention of the MCU in this.
Yes.
They're like that nerd in Earth 199999, however many nines it is.
5 nines.
Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff like that I think is really fun, just to see all of these different versions. What I liked about that a lot is that the versions that they used the most and you spent a little bit more time in are ones that you can kind of go check out some comics in those things. If you want to know a little bit more about Spider-Man India, I don't actually know his name. He's the one that is maybe the most like, there's comics out there, but not very much.
Well, we'll get more now about,
hopefully,
Pavatar Prabhakar. I don't know if I have all those syllables correct. I'm gonna have to watch it again. But I liked him very much.
You were braver than me to try and pronounce that.
I really tried to remember it. I'm not there 100%. I would like to do better.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a great number of Spider-Man 2099 out there that you can go read. If you want to know about Spider-Woman, the one who's pregnant, they have comics about her. If you want more Spider-Gwen, who Marvel has tried to get everyone to call her Ghost Spider. And I think that's a terrible name, but they are sticking to their guns on that.
I mean, we call her Spider-Gwen, but I imagine the citizens of her New York City, that they don't call her Spider-Gwen. Then they could narrow down who all the Gwens are.
She also answers to Spider-Woman in the film, not like, I'm Ghost Spider, right? Like they don't even make it a thing in the movie. But yeah, you can go read about her. The opening scene about her being in the band and her version of Peter Parker turning himself into the lizard and her killing him. That is her origin story in the comics. If you want to go read that, you can go read that in the comics. And it's fantastic. The artwork is incredible. I really liked that opening scene with her on the drums and the like circular effects of all of that stuff. That was fantastic.
Yeah, her universe was so beautiful with like the oil pastels and the streaky, runny, blurry colors, and at the end of the scenes that we have in her universe where she's like having that confrontation with her dad, the backgrounds start to become just like abstract shapes and patterns, like they're not even in a room anymore. Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. So yeah, I like that. If you were interested in, you want to know more about Mayday Parker, you can go read about her being Spider Girl.
Very cute.
That I think is neat that they focused on that.
To talk about the different variants, there's lots of ones that I had no idea existed, like Peter Parked Car, the car.
I mean, there's Spider Buggy in the amazingly the original comics. At one point, he does have a Spider Buggy. It didn't go over so well and they got rid of it. But yeah, that may have just been a pun that they added in for this.
Right. See, I don't know how many of these are real or not. I watched a video that broke down a lot of the cameos, and apparently Web Slinger, the cowboy one, is real. And I want to learn more about Web Slinger and his horse that also wears a mask.
Yeah, he may have shown up in one of the Spider-Verse comics. There are a lot of different ones out there, but I know the movie also, I'm sure, just made up a bunch of them. I don't know if the like T-Rex Spider-Man one is one or not. But the Ben Reilly clone, the one who was like super emotional. There I am in the alley, but I'm emotional because it's raining and dark, and like that.
Very
that way
90s.
you can go. Yeah, you can go read all about him. Yeah, like I liked that. There was a great inclusion of one timely for us on one of our other podcasts. Melissa Yeo and I just watched the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon on Disney Plus, and there is a scene, the like intervention scene where Miles is like, is this an intervention? There's an animated spider. I mean, they're all animated, but there
Except
is a
there
Spider-Man.
are live action clips in there. You see a Toby, you see an Andrew. Their faces are up there.
Exactly. But there is a Spider-Man that walks up and he is kind of shorter. He's 2D animated, and that is the Spider-Man from Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yes.
The exact same voice actor. He plays him. Like it's just neat that like we get like, oh, it's him. I see him.
Right. Yeah, and you see like him with his Uncle Ben dying and like the flashes of, yes, Miles, all of this has happened to all these people before. Everybody has an uncle type figure who dies.
Mm-hmm.
See, look at them all. And you see like Andrew crying over his uncle. Yeah, there's cartoon Spectacular Spider-Man with like the mole on his face. I'm like, him! I just met him. Here he is.
Yeah, exactly. It was also good to see Donald Glover back as his uncle Aaron in the Prowler.
Yeah, I like that he is like,
okay, good.
This is an alternate or future version of a cameo we had years ago. Like the continuity of that is fascinating to me. but I did really
Exactly.
like to see them. I loved all the little fan stuff like that in there, and like Spot quoting Doc Ock. And I think it's I mean, this is a very, very common line, but at some point somebody does say, "Hello, Peter," in a very meaningful Doc Ock-esque way that I always appreciate.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of good stuff in here. And like the Legos, getting to see the Legos in there.
Fantastic. Yep.
With the same, apparently they just took the same J.K. Simmons dialogue and Legoed over it. Love that.
Yeah, like I like the fans harvest aspect of this is in their full force. I like that this is now in my top 10 movies of all time. I think this one makes it up there. And I think now in my top 10, I have 2 movies that are all about how bagels messed up someone's day. This and Everything Everywhere All at Once, right?
These movies do feel like they are in some sort of an accordance with each other.
Yes, there is.
We're having a real big
Everything Everywhere All at Once reference in there. There's a billboard that's in the background. I don't remember exactly what it says.
It's like all of it everywhere all of the time. It's a title that sounds way more frustrated. Like, dang it, I got this bagel and now there's crumbs everywhere.
Right, yeah. You got the last bagel that was like left over that no one wanted.
One little visual detail I noticed, and I don't know if this is an intentional in-joke reference or if I am way overthinking it. At the party they have for his dad when he's made captain and he's like giving a speech to everybody up there on that rooftop, a real fun party. He's holding this red plastic cup that does not look like a Solo cup, like at all. You can tell it is red plastic cup, but like the shape of the thing, the like border, the lip of it is all different. And I wondered if there was some sort of reference to the fact that Lord and Miller didn't get to finish directing Solo, that they're like, there will be no Solo cups in this movie. Make it look as un-Solo as possible.
Interesting. I saw a meme today on Twitter that was also kind of a meta meme, because speaking of the creators of this movie on the review show, we're also just about to start watching Clone High, the original cartoon that Miller, it's Chris Miller and Phil Lord, right? I got those right. Okay. They created that, and it was a meme of the principal and his robot, and then the character, the like Gandhi character who's like looking sad but looking out the window, and he's like, I want to buy Across the Spider-Verse merch, but Spider Punk would be so disappointed in me. So yeah, I like all that. There might be some meta references in there that I just don't get or don't know or didn't catch. But yeah, the whole fans harvest aspect of this is in there. It's fantastic.
Because it's very
enjoy it.
Purposeful and intentional, and it makes sense within the setup and the theme of the story they're telling of all these different universes. Everything you've ever seen has existed. It is real here.
Yeah.
Like I like that I like that Spider-Man and the concept of a multiverse have become intertwined now, because in my experience as somebody who never really read comics, just watched movies, you had the Tobys, and Tobys were good and great and then really questionable, and then they were going to make a fourth and then they weren't, and then it's like, we're starting again. Dude, I know you just saw Toby, forget about Toby. It's Andrew time now. And then they were iffy about Andrew, and then it was like, are people ever going to get Spider-Man right? And then Tom hits the scene. Like, you're on this roller coaster with when are we going to see the definitive Spider-Man, but also there is a fondness and an appreciation for what every different Spider-Man incarnation brings to the table. You know, it's like the quote about Edison, like failing to make a light bulb 500 times so that he could make it like on the 501st time. This is like, what if there was a multiverse where all of those light bulbs knew each other?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So I wanted to kind of talk about this idea. So the main crux of this story, the main conflict, revolves around this idea of like, we can't let Miles know that his dad is about to die. And this is where I had not, again, I hesitate to say issue, but I'm going to say that word anyways, because again, this is a part one. This might get resolved. We're going to get more information on all this stuff. Right?
It is comic book themed word, so it is appropriate to use in any context regarding a comic book movie. Go ahead and say issue.
One of my issues with this is that it almost feels out of character for Spider-Man to like be like, no, you have to let your Captain Stacy equivalent die. You have to let your dad die. But on the flip side, it's also very much not. Like, it sets Miles up to have this very Spider-Man story, right? Where he now knows something bad is about to happen. Someone is about to die, and he will do everything and anything in his power to make sure that does not happen. That is like one of the most quintessential like Spider-Man plots, just at its very core. But then it kind of makes the other Spider-Men around him feel very out of character, of like, no, we know this guy's about to die, but we're not going to do anything to like help you or like do all of that. Like, it needs to happen. And I don't feel like that's very Spider-Man like. But that being said, I think we still don't have enough info about Miguel, right? We don't know, like, we know a little bit, like he's now replaced his version of like there's some weird thing. He's also a vampire. They barely touched on that.
I didn't totally understand that, because I saw that he had fangs and was ferocious, but looking at the logo on his chest, it looked different. And I'm like, was he bit by like a wolf spider? I know there is a werewolf Spider-Man, but is there something also like universal monsters about him?
He is. I mean, it's Spider-Man 2099. He's in the future. It is more
vampires.
Cyberpunk. Like it's a much more cyberpunk world. Alchemex is the like big corporation that has taken over. It's like I don't know much about the vampiric aspect of his character. Is he actually a vampire, or is it just the idea that spiders bite people? Why can't we make a Spider-Man that bites people, right?
Yeah.
Which reminds me of the Good Place season 2, and that one dude just wants to bite everyone, right? Can we
exclusively biting based torture plans?
Like I don't know much about that aspect, and so I that was the thing that I liked about this. My issue was like, okay, some of the like part of this plot kind of feels out of character for the spider people. If it was a non-spider person villain, if it was someone like Moreland, who I know you don't know much about, I think I mentioned a little bit, but
you tried to tell me about Moreland once. Yes,
I'm even confused on exactly who Moreland is exactly. But when they get into the whole like spider totems, spider gods, like all this, I it's a little weird and confusing. But he would be a much, like, I feel like him, like he would fit that role. But I think he's such an obscure. Well, I mean, they have Spot in this. I don't know who Spot is, right? Like I just feel like he's a much more complicated villain in a way that Spot isn't. Like, he's just this no-name guy, but he can kind of do things with the multiverse, right? That makes sense. Whereas if you have to explain spider totems and like being on the web and how each movement can notify all what in the world, like that's so complicated that I don't think it fits. But if it was someone like him, I think that would have made sense because it's someone who's not a spider person being like we need to make sure that this character dies, right? And all of that stuff. But because it's a spider person being like, we need to police all of these multiverses so that the Uncle Ben dies, the Captain Stacy, like all of that. And it's just like, that's not very Spider-Man like of you.
It seems like there are these certain events and these certain tenets that happen to a spider person that shapes their life, that shapes their journey and their purpose. But it's not like they all have very similar personalities. They have the same archetype, but the way they behave and feel and react is pretty different from each other. And I feel like I need to watch it again to really get Miguel's backstory straight. But I think he lost his family and tried to go into another universe where his family was still alive. Like he pulled a Wanda Maximoff, and like that destroyed that universe. So maybe he was in the space that Miles is now. Maybe he was like that once, and he feels like he learned this lesson of, you just let it happen. You don't fight it, because that's going to cause way more problems. And if you just let this one person die, or these several people die in the in the course of the classic Spider-Man Uncle Ben, Captain Stacy, Gwen Stacy narrative, you let these three people die, this sets you on a path to be this certain type of hero who's going to save millions more.
Yeah. And like I get the like 1 versus 100 argument of that, but then to have like every single other spider person just agree with that, whereas his whole thing is like, if he had known that this guy was going to kill Uncle Ben, he would have done everything in his power, which is again exactly the position that Miles is in right now. But like, I don't see how the other spider people can go along with that so easily. But I think that's also kind of the point of this movie. It's that position is weird. It is out of character, and slowly they're starting to kind of realize that and come to their senses and start to be like, yeah, we would do everything in our power. Why does he have to die? Our whole thing is we save everyone we can. No one should die. Why does he have to, like, why can't he be a Spider-Man and have a completely different arc? Like, he can do whatever he wants. He can be Spider-Man his own way. And I really like that. That's why, like, that's why I hesitate to call this an issue with the story, because I think even Miguel will kind of realize that he did the same thing. He did everything he could to make sure that, like, the next universe he went, like, he could have his family back. He tried to save them as much as he could, right? And so I think stuff like that is going to come out in this third movie. But yeah, did you have any kind of, like, was there something that stood out as, like, maybe you didn't like a certain aspect of the movie as much, or did you have any kind of issues with it?
No, my relationship with these movies is weird in that I look at them and I know objectively, I'm like, this is near flawless. This is truly an outstanding film. I have no notes, but it's everybody else's favorite movie, and I'd never put it in a list of my favorite movies, and I have no good reason why. It's just, I got oversaturated with other stuff first. It's like,
sure,
Into the Spider-Verse is this perfect circle, and I'm trying to put it into like some slot in my heart, like when you're a little kid and you're playing blocks with the shapes, and like the spot open in my heart is like a weird lumpy elliptical shape. And I'm putting this perfect circle in there, and I'm like, it fits. It's in there. Something's missing, though. And like the weird blobby shape that does fit in there is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I had a similar experience with this movie where I'm like, I know this is perfect, but And I know other people are watching this, having this absolutely like mind-bending, life-changing experience. And I'm just going to walk out of there like, gee, that was fun. And I don't know why. I don't know why it just sort of glosses right over me. Like, yes, a good time. But then the next day I'm like not thinking about it very much. Whereas this is other people's like whole deal.
Understandable. And that's okay. Each person has their own taste, their own interests, stuff like that. So I kind of real briefly here also wanted to talk about the kind of end of this film when
I did really like the ending.
Yeah, when Miles tries to get back to his home, he uses the machine that like reads his DNA to identify which universe he's supposed to go back to. He thinks he's back home, and he's not in his universe because he gets the machine, I guess, read the spider's DNA. That now that's mixed in there with him, it brought him back to the wrong universe here. And I thought that was a great twist at the end. Now he's also kind of lost in the multiverse, and they now need to go find him. And Gwen starts putting together a team to go find him, and it is the ones we didn't really get to see in this movie that were in the first movie, right? It's Spider-Man Noir, it's Spider-Ham, it's I don't remember her name, Penny. But the one that's in the robot. Yeah. Like it's characters like that.
Which you do really love those characters in the first movie, and you do kind of miss them, but like I think it hits the point of the Spider-Verse home better if you don't just see the same characters again. If they're like, no, there's new people in this one. They're all going to team up for the third movie, but like, here, meet Hobie, meet the Pavatar.
Yeah. And so at the end, Miles finds himself being held captive. This universe's version of Uncle Aaron is still alive, and it was his father that had passed away. And it seems that his uncle is working for the Prowler. That was also the first twist, that his uncle is not the Prowler, someone else is. And Melissa, I thought it was going to be a certain person, and they played with my expectations. It was going to be? Well, Melissa, the first Prowler in the comics is Hobie Brown.
Oh,
it is Spider-Punk. Yeah, it's not Spider-Punk, but that universe's Spider-Man, right, is Hobie ends up becoming Spider-Punk. In the original Spider-Man comics, the first Prowler is Hobie. And so when he starts speaking, I'm like, okay, he has like some voice modulator on there, but he almost has a British accent. I was like, oh shit, here we go. Like, you guys loved Spider-Punk. Here's an alternate version of him where he's a villain. And I thought that was gonna be a great like that would be a great twist, right? One of these standout characters of this. You also get to see a version where he's a bad guy, but no, it turns out to be Miles himself. Miles is the Prowler, and that is it. Like, on one hand, I was not expecting it, but also if it wasn't going to be Hobie, he would have been my second guess here, because that is also a story that has happened in Miles's comics, where whenever Miles Morales, when he got started in the comics, was in the Ultimate universe, based on the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. That version of Peter had died. Long story short, the Ultimate Comics universe got destroyed. A few of those characters, mainly Miles, got brought into the main continuity of Marvel Comics. So he's out there swinging with Peter Parker. And while Peter takes more of a not necessarily globe-trotting approach to Spider-Man, Miles is like he is the Spider-Man of Brooklyn. And it's interesting because when in the comics, when Peter shows up in his town, they're like, "Boo! We don't know you. We want the other guy." But there has been a thing where he's like, I originated in another universe. I wonder if there's another Miles Morales in this universe here. And he eventually starts to go like figure out like, is there? I wonder if there. And yeah, there is another Miles Morales out there that is in the main continuity and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my number 2 choice. But what did you think of this end here?
It's a good end. I knew that this was originally part 1 of 2 movies, and then it was split into a more traditional trilogy, so I wasn't sure how complete of an ending we were going to get here on the second movie, how much of any sort of conclusion this was going to have, but and then like where it was going, like thinking back to the trailers, they really do give you footage from what feels like it is the earlier part of the movie, even though things like all of the different spider people in the spider lobby happens towards the end. Like it feels like first act stuff. So like nothing I had seen had really given me a lot of clues to what I thought the final like 20 minutes of this movie would be. But as soon as he gets back into what he thinks is his world, like something feels off. It feels really dramatic. And I thought this is just this is climax time. You're right. It's just dark. It's rainy because now there's this really imminent danger. Like I could tell something was different. But like, it's just that I was like, just the stakes are higher now than they've ever been before. That's all it is. But no, as soon as he confesses to his mom, I'm Spider-Man. And she's like, cute. Who's that?
Yeah.
Who's Spider-Man? Then then it's locked in.
I think
it's a really cool switch.
It's transitioning between what Miles is doing and what Gwen is doing. And it looks like Gwen is outside the window listening in. And then she comes in the room and no one is in the room. And at that, you're just like, oh, like, oh, man, this is not good. They are in a different universe.
That final act, the final segment of this movie is so effective. It's so unnerving. This is the closest to like horror vibes this series has ever gotten. And I really liked it. You really have no idea what's really going to happen. I think you can tell like, well, as soon as Uncle Aaron was like, I'm not the Prowler, I'm like, okay, it's this universe's Miles. Like you can see some of it, but that doesn't mean it's less effective. Like the atmosphere is there. You're able to empathize, like put yourself in Miles' shoes where you're like, where am I? What's happening? My uncle's alive, but my dad is dead. What is any of this? That's a good spot to end us on. I really like that as the space we have to live in for a year and who knows how long until the next movie comes out.
I think it's about a year is what they have planned. Because I think they were working on them in tandem.
They were.
So yeah, hopefully we don't have to wait as long as we did to get this one. But that is another thing that is interesting to me is I'm seeing a lot of people being like, I didn't know that this was a part 1. And I'm like, again, I'm super clued into all of this stuff, like to the max. But when they announced this, they announced it as part 1. Like that was part of the marketing for a while. And then the
first teaser that came out, I think still said part 1.
Yeah, they dropped it from the title. So I knew all along that this is basically a part 1 here. Or that like this wouldn't necessarily be wrapping up. so that came as no surprise to me. But it's interesting to me. I can't judge people for it, right? Of just like, oh yeah, you're not as like laser focused on this as I am.
I mean, even I went to see this with my older brother who loves the first movie. Like he watches it with his daughter all the time. And he's like, I think she's a little too young for like how intense this one looks. So I'm going to go see it first. Maybe we'll like watch it together at home and, whenever it's available later this year. And he was still like, there's a cliffhanger. This isn't just like a whole number 2. It's part 1 of another one. I have to wait a year. I already waited 5 years. And then I was telling my roommate I was going to go see this week. And she had no idea at all that this movie was even being made. She remembered the first one. She liked the first one. She likes all the Marvel movies in general. She's seen them all. But she's like, no, what? They made another one? It's here already.
I heard someone else being like, I thought this wasn't coming out until like December, like maybe next year or something like that. And like, yeah, it's kind of interesting to me how like the different degrees to which people pay attention. That's interesting. It's fascinating. But
and like
that's not really about this movie per se. But yeah. Good stuff. I enjoyed this a lot. This was fantastic.
Yeah, I keep saying, when I say exceptionally solid, I really mean like there are no flaws on the surface of this thing.
Yeah.
It's just a straight up good time. I would like to see it again. I kind of want to check it out at that new theater that opened by me that has like the Screen X where the screen comes out on the sides of the theater.
Interesting. Yeah. I think the last thing that I will say about this is I am remaining undecided as of right now if I like this better than the first one. I know a lot of people are like, this is so much better than the first one, blah, 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 like all this stuff. I mean, I can certainly see that argument.
It's certainly more.
It is more. They've stepped up the number of animation styles. They do a lot more with it within the plot and all that stuff, right? So much so that they need 2 movies. But I think because this particular story is unresolved as of yet, right? Like I want to hold judgment.
Hard to judge.
And that first one had such an emotional reaction. Like I had such an emotional reaction to that one because Spider-Man has always been my favorite character. I've been reading Miles's comics since they got started. I love them. I love that Spider-Man is not like I am a pasty McPale white guy, right? And for me to be able to share the experience of loving Spider-Man with someone who is not my race, not my skin color, can who can maybe align themselves more so with Miles, they might connect with that story better. I love that. Like I want to be able to share that with people and to then like see the success that he had in the comics, to then the success he's had in the video games, to now these movies. Like it's crazy how popular he is and how much he's starting to dwarf Peter Parker. And I love that. And I had this emotional response that like I now get to share that with people who maybe felt like they could never connect with him or have that exact experience. And this one, since like I've already had that reaction, like I didn't have as strong of a reaction. Like I'm still emotional. Like I love seeing him with his parents and him struggling with all of that. There are emotional beats that I like that hit, and I start to feel that swell of emotion. I'm like, oh, I love this. This is amazing.
And my favorite movie is Spider-Man 2. And I get very emotional when somebody says a line that vaguely sounds like a line from that movie. That's what gets me teared up.
I know I just said that would be the last thing I would say. I have two even shorter, faster things to say. In the comics, I'm not a super big fan of Miles and Gwen being a couple. At one point, before Miles came into the main continuity, he was starting a relationship with Ultimate Kate Bishop. That I really enjoyed. That's no longer a thing. They've kind of left that in the dust. It's kind of been him and Gwen, but I've always kind of felt like they just mashed that together because they're spider people. But I'm not opposed to it. I like what they've done, especially here in these movies. That's been solid stuff. And last but not least, I think they are telegraphing a bait and switch here with this movie. Miles, his Uncle Ben moment has always kind of been his Uncle Aaron.
Yeah.
But in the comics, in the Ultimate Universe, it wasn't his dad that died. I'll say that. It was his mom instead. Oh. And I'm wondering if in this third one, it's not going to be his dad. It will be his mom. That died. If they, like, who knows? Maybe they both live. Because once Miles got brought into the main continuity, they brought his mom back. And they are both alive, and he has both of them, and they love him and support. Right. Like, I would love to see that too. So I hope none of them die. But if they really want to pull on some heartstrings, watch out for that one.
Okay. Thank you for alerting me.
Yes, because I'm sitting there the whole time, like, it's his mom that dies in the comics. It's his mom that dies in the like he'll have the like Gwen Stacy moment where he needs to save the bus or like someone else, right? And it's like his dad or his mom. Who does he save, right? And just like, that would suck. That'd be awful. But that is also Spider-Man. You drag him through the mud and he somehow makes it out eventually.
That's Peter's
but he's still sad.
Job. Drag Peter through the mud. Also, let Miles have a nice life with his two living parents.
Again, this is the thing. Why does Miles have to have those same canon moments as everyone else? He can forge his own path, right?
Another interesting little twist that I'm curious to see the fallout of is that not all of these spider people are aware of the canon events, but not all of them have lived through all of them yet. So it seems that Gwen is supposed to lose her dad. You know, it's always some sort of a law enforcement role. It's Miles's dad. It's Captain Stacy. It's Inspector Singh, I think, is the one in Mumbattan. Like, there's already there's always somebody in that sort of an authoritative role. And Gwen's dad has resigned from the police force. He's no longer Captain Stacy. And I'm wondering if, once a captain, always a captain, he's still going to die, or if the fact that he is no longer in officially any sort of position of authority like that means the canon has been broken in her timeline too. She didn't do anything on purpose. Like, he of his own agency is like, I quit the force. What does that do to her timeline? We see Miles's timeline getting broken. How many other, now that it's happening in another one, is that going to cause some sort of chain reaction? I don't know. Yeah. I'm curious to see what they do with that part of it.
That's fascinating to think about of like how does that change the Spider Verse, the multiverse, right?
And then Inspector Singh, I think was his name, he was saved over in Mumbattan. So, and we know that they are trying to save that universe, but we didn't get the conclusion on that of like if they did or not. So we'll see, but I loved this a lot. I had a blast. Yes, I really did. This is fantastic. A lot of It raises the stakes. It's more emotional, but I think it's still very fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So good stuff. Go check it out. But I think that wraps us up here for our spoiler cast on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. There you go. Miles Morales. Good stuff. Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WilkyWit. That's WilkyWit. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities.
There you go. If you guys want to follow me, I am at YoKyleSpringer on Twitter. If you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at The Whatnots, we are at The Whatnots on Twitter. Please go like, share, and subscribe. You guys know the deal with all of that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll go put the spectacular Spider-Man review show thing up there. You guys should go check that one out. But yeah, this has been number 120 of the Whatnots Reactor Core. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.